Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Canadian bass jazz multi-instrumentalist Matty Stecks. We caught up with him in late April 2020 to talk about his latest 2020 CD, Long Time Ago Rumble. With his first double album effort, he has created something eclectic along with things that include modern jazz, film score, and a lot of popular song. Originally from New York, he is now teaching in central Canada and keeps an active calendar of recording and gigs. And that is when they pick back up. He'll be ready. Get to know him.
How are you holding up?
Whew. It's unprecedented times.
Wow. Where exactly are you at?
In Brandon, Manitoba, Canada.
Thanks for taking a minute. I figured it's a good time to talk about music, so thanks for taking a minute.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you.
So it's kind of unique. You got an album out during this time of people being home, yet you can't play live music. It has to be bittersweet. So talk to me a little bit about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just right out of the gate, right up front, I have a tour that was canceled that was supposed to happen in May. It was going to be a Western Canada little romp, which is exciting for me because I'm from the States, originally the Northeast, and I haven't been out that way, so it was going to be a way to visit new places and play some music at the same time. But, we're trying to look on the bright side with it. I guess we figure if we get some airplay, some reviews up front, that could mean some live performances down the road at some point. So that's the way I'm choosing to see it right now. The project is viable as a recording itself. There is obviously a lot of things that happened on it that you could experience similarly live in that situation, but there's also some studio things happening on it, some like audio sound collage types of techniques. So, I think it's probably, we're banking a good time for people to check out the recorded medium a little more closely, when a lot of times people's lives are too busy for that. It depends on who you are, but that's the way we're going with it at any rate.
Talk to me a little bit about your beginnings. How did you get involved with jazz? Where were you born and raised?
I'm from upstate New York originally. I'm about 3 hours north of New York City, and I lived in Northeast pretty much my whole life. I went to school in Connecticut. I lived in Boston 6 years, New York for 11, Vermont 3 years, and then this is my first, I got a job teaching at a university out here in central Canada. So it was my first time like really being kind of in a different place long term. So that was a 3-year faculty appointment, and it's been a lot of fun. I got to meet some great musicians. Back then it was, I guess a typical upstate New York upbringing, public schools and learning the saxophone through the band programs there. And I sung in the choir. I was in theater in high school. And then I just was getting into checking out different kinds of music. And in college, I had the proximity to some scenes in New York and Boston, so I got to check out what that was all about, and it made me want to study with people that I really, thought I could learn from, and it just kind of went from there.
What were some early jazz influences for you? What got you really interested in jazz?
I'd say in high school, it was kind of a nice mix of rock and funk and some of the things that, teenagers tend to get into more, at least at that time. But, I had older relatives and friends of my parents themselves who had pretty good vinyl collection. It kind of turned me on to jazz. It was probably like the usual suspects at first, like you get with everybody else, kind of like Kind of Blue or Take 5 or something. But it kind of went into other territories as well. I remember pulling off an Ornette vinyl off my dad's shelf, and it wasn't even like one of his early ones. It was that album Crisis, like with the Bill of Rights burning on the cover. It had that real like revolutionary vibe to it, and I was just like, and then I listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, like my ears couldn't even handle it at the time. But but it kind of between that and listening to bands like King Crimson, it kind of like made me think that, you know, through improvisation, through instrumental music in general, there are different journeys that a musician can take that isn't like the usual path that you would find in a 3-minute pop radio bubblegum kind of tune. So it just made it was almost like the music equivalent of like a novel. It was like literature that could really dig deeper into. So I did check out, you know, some sax players, but a lot of musicians in general. I was way into Herbie Hancock. I was way into Cannonball. And I was way into, you know, some more progressive types of jazz as well. From Ornette to, I ended up studying for a while with Anthony Braxton in college, which is kind of crazy to think, but I came at it from that direction at first, and then I kind of learned a little bit more about the earlier traditions afterwards. It was a little out of order for me, but it was kind of cool. It was kind of a good way for me to sink my teeth into different kinds of things.
So what was the first live jazz show you saw that really made you think, man, this is something I want to do?
Oh, man. I did see Brubeck in Troy, New York, in a really nice sounding music hall. I was early high school. I saw Sonny Rollins as part of the same concert series. Just a great venue for that. I went with my dad to the lawn seating so you could see tons of different bands. Yeah, I remember just different live shows that I got to see in high school. There was a nice sounding music hall in Troy, New York, and some people that came through town on that series included like Sonny Rollins and Brubeck, and also my dad and I went to the Saratoga Jazz Fest every summer and sat on the lawn and got to hear tons of acts throughout the day. So I remember hearing Herbie and Chick and McCoy and Joe Henderson a ton. So yeah, those were the basic things. And then I think I indicated that Maynard Ferguson like brought his big band to my high school and did a clinic, and you know, that was the time when acts like that would actually come right to your back door and, you know, work with students. So that was really a great formative experience for me.
So what do you like best about being a musician?
I like the sort of not 9 to 5 schedule, the sort of box-in clock punching aspect to it. I mean, I do have but I kind of treat that as a little separate, and one thing kind of flows into the next, and education and performance kind of inform one another. But in terms of getting my creative flow together, I like working late into the night if I'm on a roll with something and not worrying too much about, you know, when to stop. I feel like, I think in terms of projects in that sense, you know, I'm more project-based type of thinking when that happens. So like with an album project such as this one, I get some momentum going, and then I can see things really taking shape when I have that momentum going. And the same thing goes for like when I'm learning to play, I'm trying to think through a solo or a band experience where we're interacting. It's almost like time stands still, and I really like that feeling of just being present in the moment. And that's when I feel most alive, is just like, you know, really just in that performative zone, totally dialed in and not thinking about, you know, what do I have to do in 2 hours, or dwelling on what I did 2 hours ago.
You know, we're all going to get back to live music. So my question is, what revelations do you hope both the musician and the audience gets from this absence of live music?
I hope, and I'm not, you know, there's a partial cynic in me that wonders if this is the case, but I certainly hope that average listeners will rediscover the value of music through this time, because for those who maybe had really great live music listening experiences sometime in their past, but maybe that fell off of their daily lives at some point, there was a drop-off because everyone gets busy. Seeing the absence of that now, I'm hoping they can come to terms with the value that live music has in society, and also recorded music like as its own art form in a sense. The idea of investing some dollars into your listening setup, so it's not just like out of the tinny speakers on your laptop or something. Trying to come back to that so that you really rediscover some old gems and see the connection between what those were and where music, the efforts that current musicians are making to make the music head somewhere else now. That it does grow out of something, but it is also headed somewhere else, and music hasn't died in any sense. So I hope the average listener will get a sense for that.
So my final question to you is this. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Well, I am a musician, but I don't like to be defined solely in those terms. I mean, I do have a life apart from that. I have a family. I have a young 7-year-old boy that keeps me on my toes, keeps us on our toes. I think through his learning things, discovering things that I had learned years ago for the first time, I kind of learned something about myself in the process, learning the way humans learn. And I'm also see myself as someone who is gradually, it's taken me a long time to discover this, but to gradually value the immediate local community around me, wherever I happen to be. I grew up in a town, Schenectady, New York, wishing that I could leave that town as soon as I possibly could. And, and certainly now that I have seen a little bit more of the world, I kind of miss the connections I made, those formative connections I made. So I have decided to channel that into, the community I'm currently in, and just be of service to someone, and not be so transactional about it. So, I think, foremost, I want people to see me as a human being, who is evolving like anyone else, and music plays a big part in that, but it's not the only part.
Right on, man. Hey, thank you for taking some time out. It's obviously a extraordinarily surreal time in this world, and I appreciate you talking a little bit about what's going on in your music.
Sure, yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Canada, America, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Matty for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.